Ah, sit down, child, because this one is a story you won't soon forget. Families, you see, are like gardens. They can be beautiful, full of life, but underneath there are always tangled roots, hidden weeds, and secrets that fester quietly until someone steps on the wrong spot. And sometimes it takes the smallest action to turn a calm garden into a whirlwind of storms. That's exactly what happened one afternoon in a house that looked perfectly ordinary on the outside, but was brimming with tensions and quiet rivalries within. It all began with something as simple as a little plastic card, something people often underestimate. To some, it's just a tool, a convenience, something to make life easier. But in the wrong hands, or perhaps the right ones, it becomes a symbol of control, entitlement, and the balance of power. You see, one of the young women in the family had grown accustomed to relying on it without a thought. She carried it around with the ease of someone who believed she could take what she wanted whenever she wanted, thinking no one would ever challenge her. But that day, someone did. With a quiet resolve that only comes from years of observing and understanding human nature, the card was canceled, not in anger, not with shouting or confrontation, but in a calm, deliberate way that left no room for argument. Just like that, the rules of the household shifted, the subtle balance of power rearranged itself, and oh, the reactions. At first, it was confusion. "Why isn't it working?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration and disbelief. It wasn't a question anyone could answer easily, because the truth was simple yet sharp. Control had been quietly reclaimed, and the illusion of privilege had been broken. The tension didn't stop there. Secrets, you see, have a way of creeping out when the air gets thick with unease. As she scrambled to figure out what had gone wrong, whispers started to ripple through the rooms, hushed conversations full of speculation and quiet blame. The family, once seemingly united in everyday routine, began to reveal cracks they didn't even know were there. Loyalties were tested, patience strained, and the carefully constructed assumptions everyone had about each other began to unravel. And in the middle of it all, the one who canceled the card sat back and watched, quietly enjoying the unfolding drama, knowing full well that sometimes the most powerful lessons are the ones people have to learn for themselves. What made it even more fascinating was the mix of panic and realization that followed. Every failed attempt to use the card, every phone call or message sent in desperation, was like a small explosion in a house that had been simmering with hidden tensions for months. The young woman began to understand, perhaps for the first time, that actions have consequences, and that her sense of entitlement had its limits. And as the realization settled in, the subtle shift in power became undeniable. Those who had quietly observed now held the upper hand, and the family dynamics were forever changed. It's funny, child, how the smallest things can expose the largest truths. That canceled card revealed attitudes, dependencies, and truths that polite conversation or gentle reminders never could. People's true colors came out: the frustration, the guilt, the desperation, and yes, even the begrudging acceptance of the new reality. It was a quiet storm, the kind that changes the way everyone in the house moves, speaks, and thinks. In families, these small disruptions often uncover the hidden layers of connection and conflict, revealing not just the character of one person, but the intricate web of relationships that tie everyone together. And through all of this, there was no cruelty in the act, only wisdom and foresight. Sometimes, life doesn't need to shout to teach lessons. A simple, calculated action is enough to shift everything. The canceled card became more than a piece of plastic. It became a mirror reflecting entitlement, dependence, and the delicate balance of respect within a family. Every sigh, every frustrated step, every whispered conversation reminded everyone that nothing in life is guaranteed and that sometimes the quietest actions have the loudest consequences. Ah, let me tell you, child, there comes a time in every household when someone has to step forward. Someone who has watched quietly for years, seen the patterns, the little missteps, the arrogance of youth, and knows exactly when to act. And in this story, it was the elder, the one who had the patience of a saint and the cunning of a fox. She had seen it all, Arguments that fizzled before they began, promises broken, respect given but never returned. And she knew that sometimes you had to make a move that no one saw coming, a move so bold it would shift the entire energy of the house. It happened one afternoon when the house was deceptively calm, the kind of calm that always comes right before something stirs. Everyone was going about their business, the younger ones moving around with confidence, believing that life would always bend to their whims. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, the elder made her decision. The card, that symbol of convenience and unchallenged privilege, would be cancelled, not in anger, not in a way that would cause an immediate scene, but with precision and intent, a move that carried the weight of years of observation and the wisdom that comes only with age. When the news reached the young woman, it hit like a sudden chill. The card that she had assumed would always work, always grant her access and ease, was suddenly useless. She tried again, then again, each attempt met with silence, each swipe a quiet reminder that the rules had changed, that the balance of power had shifted, and that someone had finally drawn a line. The elder, sitting in her favorite chair with knitting in hand, watched with a subtle satisfaction, a small smile playing on her lips, knowing that the boldness of this move would ripple through the house in ways no one could have predicted. And ripple it did. The young woman's frustration grew, bubbling from confusion into panic, her movements becoming more frantic with every failed attempt. She called out for help, sought explanations, pleaded for solutions, and every interaction revealed more about her reliance, her assumptions, and her inability to see the larger picture. Meanwhile, the elder remained calm, collected, the very image of quiet authority. There was no need for loud words, no need for confrontation. The boldness of the act itself was enough to assert control and demonstrate a wisdom that could not be questioned. It wasn't just about canceling a card, of course. That was only the surface. It was a statement, a calculated demonstration of understanding human nature, of knowing exactly when and how to act to create change. Every gesture, every glance, every deliberate pause carried meaning. Those who witnessed it began to recognize the power of patience and the importance of timing. They began to see that authority is not always about raising your voice, but about knowing the right moment to act, the right action to take, and having the courage to do so. The household, once confident and predictable, now moved differently. There was a newfound awareness in the air, a recognition that the elder had seen through the assumptions of the younger members, had understood their patterns, and had acted decisively in a way that no one expected. The bold move was a reminder that wisdom and cunning often come wrapped in quiet, subtle gestures, that strength doesn't always announce itself with thunder, but can quietly reshape everything in its path. Even the youngest observers, the ones who thought they understood the house, began to notice the shift. The elder's decision had created a subtle yet undeniable respect, a careful reconsideration of what was taken for granted, and an appreciation for the sharpness and decisiveness that sometimes comes only with age. There is something profoundly satisfying about witnessing someone take control in such a deliberate, intelligent manner, and the household could not ignore the lesson embedded in that quiet, bold action. Every corner of the home seemed to carry the echo of that move. Conversations were tinged with a new awareness, movements more thoughtful, and even small gestures began to reflect the understanding that actions, no matter how small they may seem, can carry enormous weight when executed with courage, timing, and clarity of mind. This is over 600 words, written in the grandma story style, fully centered on a bold, strategic move by the elder, highlighting wisdom, cunning, and personality, without an ending sentence. If you like, I can next create a version with dialogue and inner thoughts, making it read like a dramatic story for video narration or storytelling. Do you want me to do that? Now, sit down, because this is one of those stories that teaches you more about people than years of polite conversation ever could. Families are funny things, you know. On the surface, everything seems calm, orderly, and filled with routine. But underneath, there are currents running deep, currents of expectation, of dependence, of unspoken assumptions about who holds power and who simply follows. And sometimes all it takes is the smallest spark, a little nudge, to reveal the true shape of those currents. In this house, that spark came in the form of a canceled card. It wasn't dramatic at first. Life went on as usual, breakfast plates clinking, the hum of conversation, footsteps crossing the floor. But soon, the young woman realized that the card she had counted on for convenience and easy access simply would not work. A small panic crept in, subtle at first, almost like a whisper. Then it grew louder, more persistent. She tried, again and again, each attempt met with the quiet firmness of a decision already made. And with each failed swipe, with each unanswered request, a veil began to lift. The first reaction was confusion. "Why isn't it working?" she asked, her tone sharp with frustration. There was hesitation in the air, a pause in the usual rhythm of the house, and everyone began to notice. Little cracks started appearing, the ones that had been carefully hidden beneath smiles, pleasantries, and polite nods. The canceled card didn't just stop transactions, it exposed patterns. It showed who assumed entitlement, who relied too heavily on the kindness or patience of others, and who had never considered the consequences of their actions. As hours passed, the reactions became more telling. There was pleading, bargaining, and a subtle defensiveness that made the air thick. The young woman tried to make sense of her situation, but her frustration revealed something deeper. A dependence she hadn't even realized existed, a belief that life would always make her path easy. And through it all, the rest of the family began to respond differently too. Some stepped in to offer quiet guidance, others held back, their judgment hidden behind measured expressions, waiting to see what would happen next. Each interaction became a mirror, reflecting attitudes, vulnerabilities, and intentions that had been buried beneath casual routines. The canceled card, though small in appearance, became a test, a kind of unspoken challenge that revealed truths more clearly than any argument or confrontation could. People who had been generous in appearance now revealed hesitation, their willingness to support conditional and cautious. Those who had been outspoken began to falter, their confidence shaken by the simple yet profound shift in circumstances. And the young woman herself, the one who had assumed so much, began to realize that the house was not built on convenience alone, but on relationships that required respect, understanding, and mutual acknowledgement. What was fascinating, child, was how quickly people's true colors emerged. In moments of need, under subtle pressure, masks slipped, and the real character of each family member became visible. There were flashes of compassion, glimpses of patience, and, yes, moments of frustration that were unavoidable. Every attempt to solve the problem, every question asked, every sigh or huff revealed layers of dependence and entitlement, revealing the delicate, complicated web of connection that held the family together. Even the quietest observers, the ones who rarely spoke but always noticed, began to understand. They saw the tension, yes, but they also saw the lessons unfolding. The canceled card, in its simplicity, had become a measure, a way to test relationships and reveal truths that polite conversation never could. It exposed expectations that had gone unexamined, attitudes that had been taken for granted, and vulnerabilities that had remained hidden until the right moment. In a family, these small disruptions are rarely just about the object itself. They are about trust, respect, and understanding. They force everyone to examine how they interact, how they assume, and how they depend on others. And when the card remained inactive, unyielding to repeated attempts, it forced reflection, adaptation, and a subtle reckoning with reality. The house, once comfortable in its predictability, now had to navigate the unseen shifts in power, understanding, and self-awareness that came with the exposure of true intentions. Ah, child, let me tell you about the day when quiet wisdom met a little bit of poetic justice, the kind of moment that makes you sit back in your chair and shake your head with a knowing smile. Families are full of little dramas, little injustices that seem to pass unnoticed until someone decides it's time for life to show its balance. And sometimes, that someone doesn't shout or demand attention. Sometimes they act quietly, with precision, letting the universe do most of the work. That afternoon was one of those moments. It began with a small, almost trivial decision, canceling a card that had been used freely, without question, for convenience and entitlement. To anyone else, it might have seemed insignificant, a minor inconvenience, but in that household, it was a catalyst, a gentle nudge that would trigger reactions far beyond the plastic itself. It was a calculated act, a quiet push that forced the young woman, who had taken ease and privilege for granted, to confront consequences she had never considered. The tension was immediate but subtle, like a storm forming on the horizon that everyone senses but can't see clearly yet. At first, there was confusion, a frown, the usual scrambling that comes when expectations are challenged. "Why isn't it working?" she asked, her voice tight with frustration, unaware that the real lesson had little to do with the card and everything to do with her assumptions. The attempts that followed were frantic, the calls made, the questions asked, the excuses invented, all in vain. The elder, watching quietly from her chair, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips, knew exactly what was unfolding. It wasn't just about stopping access, it was about allowing life to reveal its balance, a little karmic nudge to teach accountability, patience, and humility. There is a certain humor in watching someone so used to convenience stumble, fumbling through the consequences of their own assumptions. Every phone call, every frustrated sigh, every small argument that erupted over the card became a kind of theater, a mix of tension and comedy where the storyteller, who had orchestrated this quiet upheaval, could savor the subtle satisfaction of witnessing karma in motion. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, enjoying the lesson as it unfolded, letting every misstep, every impatient plea demonstrate the truth that actions have consequences, that privilege without consideration can crumble in a heartbeat. And oh, the emotional layers. The young woman's initial confusion slowly turned to desperation, her calm facade replaced with a mix of embarrassment, frustration, and disbelief. She had assumed that life would always yield to her expectations, that the comfort she had relied on would never be questioned. But now, reality pressed in, quiet but insistent, showing her the ripple effect of entitlement and dependence. Every moment of struggle was a reflection, a mirror held up to her own choices and assumptions, revealing the emotional vulnerability she had hidden so well from the family around her. Meanwhile, the elder, the orchestrator of this poetic justice, did nothing overt. There was no lecture, no reprimand, only a steady, quiet presence that observed, measured, and allowed the consequences to unfold naturally. And in that measured observation lay the true power, the ability to let life itself demonstrate the lesson, the satisfaction of knowing that no shouting, no confrontation, was necessary when karma had its own way of teaching. It's fascinating, child, how the smallest action can expose so much, hidden impatience, unexamined expectations, and even the capacity for reflection. Those who witness it, even quietly, feel a mix of tension, amusement, and awe, seeing the elegance of cause and effect played out in the microcosm of a family dispute. Emotional manipulation, if you want to call it that, was not cruelty, it was clarity, an opportunity for someone to face reality, to understand that privilege is never guaranteed, and that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing itself in the quietest, most deliberate ways. And through it all, there was satisfaction, yes, but not the mean-spirited kind. It was the satisfaction of seeing justice take its own course, of knowing that a lesson was being learned without a single harsh word, of recognizing that subtle, thoughtful actions often carry far more weight than loud confrontation ever could. The house hummed with new energy, with awareness, and even humor, as everyone began to recognize that the consequences of their actions are never as far away as they think, and that life, quietly and cleverly, always has its way of setting things straight. Ah, child, there's nothing quite like watching a little storm in a family to teach lessons that textbooks never could. You see, families are not just about living under the same roof or sharing meals. They are living, breathing ecosystems of personalities, habits, and emotions. Each person carries expectations, assumptions, and little quirks that sometimes clash in the most unexpected ways. And then, just when everyone thinks life is predictable, something happens. A quiet decision, a small action, a tiny spark that changes everything and shows the true rhythm of relationships. It began, as many stories do, with something deceptively small, a card canceled quietly, deliberately, with careful thought. On the surface, it seemed trivial, almost inconsequential, but in that moment it became a mirror, reflecting the assumptions, dependencies, and attitudes that had been quietly shaping the household for years. The young woman, used to privilege and ease, was suddenly forced to face reality. Frustration bubbled, confusion set in, and hidden vulnerabilities were laid bare. Every attempt to navigate life without the convenience she had taken for granted became a lesson in humility and patience. The elder, sitting quietly and observing, did not gloat, nor did she raise her voice. Her satisfaction was subtle, like the gentle arch of a knowing eyebrow or the quiet clack of knitting needles. She understood that life teaches most effectively when consequences are allowed to unfold naturally. Through the canceled card, she revealed more than the limits of convenience. She revealed the importance of respect, awareness, and the interconnectedness of everyone in the home. It was poetic justice, yes, but also a carefully orchestrated reminder that no one exists in isolation, that every action has ripples. As the day went on, the reactions unfolded like chapters in a book. The young woman's attempts to reclaim her lost convenience revealed impatience and entitlement, while the quiet bystanders, those who had simply observed the routines, began to recognize the patterns of dependence that had gone unnoticed. The house itself seemed to hum with the rhythm of understanding, the subtle awareness that respect and consideration are not optional, and that actions, no matter how small, carry consequences. And through it all there was laughter too, quiet and knowing, the kind that comes from witnessing life teach its lessons in a gentle yet undeniable way. By the evening, when the sun slanted through the windows, casting long golden shadows across the floor, the household had shifted. Relationships were tested and reshaped, attitudes adjusted, and humility found its place beside patience. The young woman, after much fumbling and reflection, began to understand that convenience is not entitlement, that respect is earned and not assumed, and that awareness of others' perspectives is a form of wisdom all its own. The elder's quiet boldness had done more than cancel a card. It had opened eyes, hearts, and minds to the delicate balance of family life. And that, my dear, is the lesson that lingers long after the storm passes. Families are built not only on love, but on understanding, consideration, and the patience to let lessons unfold in their own time. Life has a way of revealing what matters most when you least expect it, and sometimes the quietest, boldest actions teach the biggest truths. There is a rhythm to respect, a balance to patience, and a harmony to relationships that cannot be rushed, ignored, or taken for granted. Life teaches in quiet ways. Small actions often carry the weight of the largest lessons. Respect and consideration are earned, never assumed, and they shape every relationship in the family. Patience is more powerful than frustration, and humility is often revealed through small challenges. Entitlement and dependence, when left unchecked, are exposed by life's little tests. Observing quietly and acting deliberately can guide others toward reflection without the need for confrontation.